Hello, everybody, and welcome. Today I'm chatting with Colm O'Rourke, owner of the Lobster seafood restaurant and the Blackness Bay Distillery, sitting together in Blackness near Falkirk. Hi, Colm.
Hi there, Jim. Nice to be on, thanks.
Thank you. So, first thing I would say to you is go easy on anything you refer to about your age, because I think I'm a similar age. So
That's right, indeed. Yes. Of a certain age, as you say, and what do you call it? Yeah, that's so similar in many ways, isn't it? Except you were born in Scotland and I was born in Ireland, obviously.
yeah, indeed. So going from there, where did life begin for you? Where you grew up?
I grew up in a fishing village called Hope, and it was a village then. It's become a more suburb of Dublin now. It's at 9-10 miles outside Dublin on a peninsula that forms the north of the bay. And I was born there in this fishing village, and it's a really nice spot. And when I left school, I went on the trawlers there. That's what I did when I was 14. Started working on the fishing trawler there. Now, Scotland, or rather, Hope had an association with Scotland in that a lot of Scottish fishermen used to travel down in the boat, following the herring way back in the time. That the herrings used to start up in Scotland, then come down and right down to the south of Ireland. And so a lot of our fishermen settled in our village, most notably the foremen. The foremans were a big family, and they had used to be spies, and they did in particular, they did Kipper House. They had Kipper House on the quay where they smoked seafood, and they were very famous for the smoked seafood. Now, I understand there's a foreman in London now who do smoked fish, and I often wondered if there was any associations, but never got to know.
That's interesting. Quite possibly is a connection.
Yeah, you would think so, wouldn't you? Because what do you call it? As I say, a lot of the Scottish fishermen, as they fished down the Irish coast, they met girls and they married and settled in the areas. You see, and also after the last war, a lot of the Scottish trawlers were sold to Ireland because the British government refinanced the Scottish fleet, or the British fleet, presumably, with financing and so on. And so they sold off a lot more of the 50-foot boats, that they were called, boats around the 50-foot size, that were lovely boats. And an awful lot of them came down to Ireland, as I say, after the war. And so we were not only had Scottish fishermen, but we had Scottish boats all around as well.
Ireland was a big market for Scottish fishermen when they were maybe building bigger, newer boats. They were confident to do it because they had a good market for their second-hand boats.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, okay. A total interconnection between them the whole time, between the Scotland and Ireland on the fishing. A very similar type of fishing went on in both countries,
Very similar people. I think it's the Celts in us all.
Absolutely. I'm always fascinated when I'm living in here in Scotland, as I look at maps, and I love maps. I love reading maps and reading out the names. I keep coming across obscure names that I know from Ireland for villages and things like that, and they're the exact same ones in Ireland. I mean, you just got to think of Galway and Galloway and all sorts of names like that are exactly the same, just for a couple of a letter here or there or pronunciation. And there's heaps of them as you look at maps. I love that.
Yeah, but some of the people in the Faroe Islands class, St Kilda, the Hebrides, and as parts of their old kingdom, when it was a Viking.
That's right, the Dalriada and all that, yes, down there, yes, indeed.
They talk about the South Isles.
Right. That's a good idea. Yeah. When I'm doing my distillery tours, when the people are from abroad, which more than half of them are the tours that we get, I pretend to be Scottish because they play the bagpipes, and I meet them with the bagpipes, and then I pretend to be Scottish. They prefer that, the tourists, the Americans and the Europeans, and what do you call it? So I carry on like that, and up my game and pretend to be Scottish. So I quite like that.
Are you going to tell me there's an O'Rourke tartan?
We think that I haven't gone that far as when they tilt yet, but I do play the bagpipes, and they're all quite convinced that I'm Scottish, so I do like that. And they like the authentic Scottish experience, you see, and so that helps a lot. I tried with Scottish people. I tried putting on a Scottish accent, but they always spot it. They always say, hang on, that's not for us. And what made me there, because I describe myself as being from the Western Isles, which is technically nearly right, but there we are. It's just expressing a point.
Well, the big thing there, Colm, you're not telling a lie. It is Wales.
I tell a few of them as well, but there we go.
And if I could take you back, I'm interested because I know Hoth very well. I've been there a number of times.
Excellent.
And when you say there about the herring, I see Hoth on the east coast of Ireland.
Yeah.
Did the herring come down the Irish Sea? Or
mostly all down there? That was the main bit. And Hoth people were called Hoth herring. That's what they call you. That was the sort of a nickname, collective nickname for Hoth people. We were called Hoth herrings because it was so famous for the herring. And always the herrings came down the east coast, down the Irish Sea, and on down, and it would go right down to Wexford and around to Dunmore East in Waterford. The herrings would go round. For some reason or other, they would turn the corner there and go right around the end there. And we used to go bear trawling for the midwater trawling at night, and which was lovely. And so we'd pair up two tourists, would join up and tow the one net through, land one on one boat. They would shoot the next net and pair them up again, and we would do midwater trawling, as we used to call it. And then, interestingly enough, Dutch luggers, and this is when we'd be down on the south coast, Dunmore East and around towards Cork, and the Dutch luggers and Russian luggers would come in, and after the fish, we would go in with the catch in the morning and after the night fishing, we would land the boat, the thing in creels, in the baskets. And once they were sold at market, we would be told to go out to a ship and unload onto the ship, and all the herrings they'd be scooped up into baskets on the tin and tipped with the taking derrick onto the ships, and they were taken away to Eastern Europe somewhere, I suppose, in Holland, I suppose, and the thing market. Never so much for the Irish market, but it was mainly went abroad, all the herrings, and they were salted into barrels. You could see women on the decks of the luggers, as they were called, taking the herrings away. But not much herring fishing now in Ireland, I'm afraid.
It sounds to me, when you're classing it as luggers, it's almost there was a massive fishing in the lake of Allapool and places like that. And the ships were called Klondikers.
Oh, right.
And they were mostly Russian and Eastern European, and they were factory ships, and they would be moored you would go drive to Allapool, and looking down the bay, there would be dozens of factory ships lying, and the Scottish boats, when they come in, they would go alongside them and discharge their catch to them.
That's right.
So it sounds very similar. What we called Klondikers and you called lugger.
We were calling luggers, yeah. No, that's extraordinary, isn't it? Yeah, I never knew that. But they were lovely times. They were lovely times, and there was always women working on the boats, which I quite found fascinating. What do you call it? I was a young man, so I was fascinated with women.
A hot-blooded male. Now, I take it you're going back there and you're talking. Is that when the 50-foot Scottish boats you were getting? So they must have been. You must have been ring netting.
No, not ringing. No. As I say, Petra, they were more. By then they were going up to the boats I worked on were 70 and 80 foot long. 80, to be honest. Then again, still still ex-Scottish boats. One of them was called the Dunedin, which I didn't even know was a Scottish name. I thought it must be some obscure village in Ireland, and it turned out to be the city of Edinburgh. The old name for the city of Edinburgh. I never knew that, Dunedin. So I always smile when I think of that, how ignorant I was, and how you always assume that things were Irish when they weren't. But there we go. And we absolutely loved that. It was a lovely, the best life for a young man, leaving school. It was really, really wonderful experience, and I always treasured that and always remembered. And I met my wife when I was scrubbing the boat. We were on the hard and Hoth, and I was scrubbing the bottom of the boat, and she came riding along on a horse. They were exercising horses for a local man, and that's where I met my wife, and what do you call it? And we went from there. That's a long time ago. We're married now. 55 years now.
That's
So
wonderful.
going back.
Yeah. So she wasn't put off with somebody coming off a dirty, smelly trolley.
No. Funny enough, I would say in those days when I was a kid in Hope, it was always fascinating because when the trawlers would come in at night or after a couple of nights, and they would come into Hoth and they'd pull up alongside the quay, and all the kids and people, the quayside was a real hub of people always interested in walking up and down, and the boats would land their fish boxes and they would put the hooks on and take them up on a taking derrick and land on the quay, and and then they would throw the bycatch. Everything that was left wasn't thrown overboard like you do now. What they used to do, all the small fish were then put up on the quay, and kids like me and that would put them on a hank with a bit of string, what we call the hank. We would go through the gills with a bit of string, and we would get a bunch of fish, of the undersized fish, and that would be great. And you go home with them, and all the local children and adults as well would take some of these fish, a hank of fish home, and so all the smaller fish were kept in the village, were free for the village people, which I quite like the thing, you know. And of course that all stopped when they stopped. Why? When the fish were dead, I don't know why they weren't allowed to bring them in now. But there we go. That's another story, isn't it? There we are.
Well, they land them here now. They're called discards, and they go as long as they don't go for human consumption. So the creel boats buy them for bait.
Right, gotcha. Right. Anyway, so we used to eat them, and they were nice. Very nice, yeah. Here's the thing, there was always a mat of whiting. There was a huge amount of whiting, and no one ever said whiting anymore. You never seem to see it anywhere, do you? What happened?
Yeah, it's strange how I think,
Whiting is the most popular fish. Was that in Scotland? Did you have whiting much in Scotland?
Yeah, there seems to be more again in the North Sea.
Right.
So I think it's just cyclical.
Yeah.
You know, I have a story I tell often, Colm, when my father, it's him had told me, and they were fishing. This is in the Murray Firth, which is in the northeast of our country.
Yeah.
And he was telling me that he was listening to two lossymouth boats fishing not far from them. And it was long before mobile phones or anything like that. So they were the radio or the VHF, and he was hearing them talking. And one of them had obviously just hauled his net, and the other was asking him how he got on, did he catch much? And he was saying, he was explaining just what he caught. And the other guy come back and says to him, "Oh, did you get a haddock in the haul?" And he come back, and bear in mind, this is just after the war. And the guy come back to him saying, "The next haddock you'll see is in a glass case in a museum." And not long after that, till now, the sea's full of haddock. The sea's full of haddock.
Absolutely, that's extraordinary. Yeah. Yes, and I've heard that herrings are beginning to make a bit of a comeback. So in part of Scotland now, some springs, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So everywhere now.
Unfortunately, now it's more. It's decided now by men in white coats, politicians and scientists, not Mother Nature or fishermen.
No, sadly, no, the way of the world.
So where did you study?
I went to Hope National School, which is the national school in the village, and what do you call it? It was quite a good school. And then you had a choice then either to go on to secondary school if you were bright enough, you passed the exam enough, or the other choice was you could go to vocational colleges. But what they were then, which you were doing a trade, so you split into trade or into thing. There wasn't many academics in our village went on to secondary school, but a lot of the lads go on to the fishing boats. And our schoolmaster called Mr. Levy, he would, in the last year of the national school, he would do some classes on fishing, which is quite nice. He used to do a background in the fishing industry and how it works and all that, which is quite nice for the lads who were going off, because a lot of them were children of boat people and were going off to work on the boats. And it was nice that they included us in education. And you don't ever get that. in schools anymore of people. Of course, there aren't areas of industry now, so they what do you call it? They wouldn't be teaching local people for local trades anymore. So what do you do?
Really sad, poignant when you say that, how it has changed, because like you, I remember in our classroom, every boy in the classroom with you was from a fishing family, and my dad caught more fish than your dad, and every one of them ever wanted, never thought of anything else. They were going to be a fisherman, and
Absolutely.
the absolute goal was to maybe even become a skipper and maybe eventually own your own boat. That was the ambition,
Absolutely.
and it just kept the communities. And I remember my mother and father used to tell me in the villages. Well, our village isn't all that big, but the butcher and the local shops would say at the weekend they would know if the boats had a good week.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Extraordinary. Yeah.
and I reckon, I know there are saying quite often, probably the same in Ireland, for a coastal community, for every fisherman living in the community, there's about 7 to 15 jobs ashore.
Oh, it did. Well, I never knew that, or I never heard that. No, that's interesting, isn't it?
Well, supporting local shops and fishmongers, lorry drivers, fuel men, icemen. And what we have now in our area, I live in right in the very north of Scotland, we have a 20% depopulation every year.
Wow. I never knew that. 20% depopulation.
20% depopulation. And as you can imagine, we lose, it's the worst. We lose, it's the younger people and and wealth creators, like job creators. And
wow.
And that's a similar picture throughout. That's not just us up in the Highlands here, that's throughout the Highlands.
Wow. I hadn't realised that. That's such a shame, isn't it? Wow. Particularly with distance working now, you think people will be able to work in faraway places without it impinging on their what do you call it? But all the young people want to go to the city, don't they? You get that everywhere, don't you? They all want to go to the Central Belt and all that type of thing. It's difficult, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And if they go to maybe university or college, they don't come back.
No.
So you actually, I take it you left the school and went fishing.
Yeah. And then I was at that for 4 or 5 years, and then my wife and I had to leave Ireland quickly. And what happened was, so I don't know if you really want to put this on thing, but when she became pregnant, as these things happened, this was coming into the 60s, and what do you call it? We were all a little bit for her influence, and she became pregnant, and because we were from different religions, we were asked, we had to leave the country for a bit to avoid complications and so on, family complications and so on. It was nothing serious, but there was discomfort among the family, so we got out of the way for a bit, and meaning to come back, and we did come back, and so on, back and forward and that type of thing. But so that brought the end of my fishing career rather abruptly, and so on. So we went off working in England for a while, and then came back later. And then I've been back and forward ever since, because then what happened was I got into I was doing a fair bit of building work and doing joinery and that. And then the Irish pub phenomenon started, that people were quite enjoying going to Irish pub. In Britain, they were doing a lot. And so I came over to England, bringing over stuff for Irish pubs. And then I started designing and fitting out Irish pubs, you see. Tell me if this is too far off the subject, but it was so I was fitting out Irish pubs all around England, and then I started running a few pubs myself and my wife, and we would do that type of thing. And so I'd be back and forward to Ireland, bringing Irish stuff over all the time, and fitting out Irish pubs and things up and down Britain. And we did so many pubs. You wouldn't believe, for all the main companies and ourselves. We ran a small chain of pubs ourselves doing that, and that's how I ended up in the pub industry, which is now morphing very much into the restaurant industry, as you as you know, and so on, because as particularly with country pubs and seaside pubs, as the drink and driving and population, rather as the people who can access a pub easily has gone down quite a lot. So you need to go into the food side very more, and the food is very much taken over from the drinking now, and so that's how we came into that. You see.
Okay. That's really interesting. And you bought. What's the story of the Lobster Pot restaurant?
Right. So we came to Scotland. We were working in England, and we have a home in Ireland still. And what do you call it? Which we do a little holiday business in, a cottage and a house. And so what happened was that I was ready to. We were our final move back to Ireland. We to come back and forward, and my daughter was studying at Edinburgh University, and then she went on into the health service and that, working at Carstairs down the big hospital down their way, and what do you call it? And she's still at Edinburgh University now. Anyway, so she was having a baby, and my wife said, "Oh, let's go up there for a year to help mind the baby for a year, and then we go back to Ireland." And this is 15 years ago, and they still haven't let me get back to Ireland. Every year I say, "I'm going home, yeah," and every year I say, "Oh, just a bit longer now. Wait till he leaves school now," and it's all this business. Anyway, so there we are. Never got back. So anyway, and I like doing I like working. You see, doing building work and fitness. So I bought this old Georgian house in this village, Blackness, by the sea on the Firth of Forth. The pub there was closed for 10.5 years, and so I was living there and looking out across my garden, out at the pub, and it was driving me mad. An Irishman having the pub next door closed and no other pub in the village, so I had to drive out. And if you drove out, there's only two, so one you couldn't drink. So what's the point? So there, I sat there, nursing my can of beer, looking at this fella. So eventually, to stop going mad, I bought the place and went in and refitted it, and loved doing that. And went back to doing what I used to do. But I didn't do an Irish pub because that wouldn't have been right. And so I wanted to do a seafood pub for the village and so on. And I love seafood and all that. So I refitted out the pub and redid it all, completely gutted it out and restarted. And I called it the Lobster Pub because I thought that was quite a nice name for a thing. But also I had intentions of buying a lobster boat and fishing myself off the thing. That was my way into a boat, because I had built a boat before, which sank. And I love boats, and I wanted to build and lobster boat and thing. What happened was I built it. I thought I built it well. I built it a sandwich construction. It's only small, only 26-footer. And but I had a big outboard engine on the stern, but I hadn't reinforced the stern, the transom strong enough. And eventually, the rest of the boat wasn't quite down, but I didn't do the transom, and the transom fell off and took the thing with it, and the boat sank. So there we are. My lack of success and things. So I was on the cusp of buying lobster boats on several occasions here. Anyway, but it's very tight on here, so that's one of the setbacks. Anyway, the upshot was that we started up the pub, and we thought, because we're in an isolated little village by the sea, but only a short, half an hour from Edinburgh left, and there's a big population around in the towns around. But I thought it'd be a sort of weekend pub, like you get in the Western Scotland and like you get in the west of Ireland, a sort of weekend pub where both my wife and I do the bit of music, and we thought, well, we'd nice on a Friday night to do a bit of music and play the box and that type of thing. And I thought that'd be nice to do a bit of music, have a pub where we would sort of enjoy ourselves playing at it, at the thing. Anyway, we opened up, and I wanted it to just sort of easy grilled seafood. So I wanted it to be lobsters, sea bass, stuff that you could grill without having to go into fancy chefs and all that bit. But the trouble was, it took off quite fast, and we didn't expect it. It took off, and we couldn't cope, and then we had to get chefs in, and then the menu expanded, and then it all expanded into something much more. And and we ended up with 4 chefs now. And and it got too busy of us, so we got a manager, you see, and and of course the chefs and things want to put their own style on. We got a really good chef. He'd been 20 years up at St. Andrews, up at the Old Course Hotel, which they tell me is a quite famous hotel up there. Anyway, he was of a certain age, and his lifestyle, COVID came, and like a lot of people, he wanted a change of lifestyle. And, he looked at his life like we all did in COVID. And he didn't want to be driving all the way up to St. Andrews every day, and a lot of miles. So he he saw we were looking for a chef. Our first chef had gone back to Poland with not with COVID, but because of the COVID, to be with his family. And what do you call it, Dub? And so our new chef came, and he was top man on seafood and that, and he got quite a reputation. And for the seafood, and he brought our seafood up to a level that we hadn't made before, and that took off really well. So now we had a manager, Jim. Stop me from talking too much, but we had a manager now, but you can't. When you've got a manager, if you're trying to interfere, you can't be there all the time because you're getting in their way. You're just. It's not good to be there all the time. So I was pushed out or left out a little bit, and I wanted something else to do. So I came up with this idea of doing. I love touristy things and I love seafood things and boats. I'm obsessed with boats, and I'll paint boats all the time. I do. Anyway, up in Inverary on the quay, there's a boat called the Viking Spark. You see, and are you familiar with the Viking Spark at Inverary? The Clyde puffer.
A brilliant story. It's a book.
So the Clyde puffer up at Inverary was owned by a builder in what did call the place across the river from Greenock. Is it Dunoon? Yeah, it is Dunoon.
Yeah, Dunoon. Yeah, Dunoon.
A builder from there, a really nice man. He had this boat for a number of years at Inverary with a 30-year berthing, you see, and he was selling that, not naturally, and he was sad to sell it because he's a really nice man, and he was selling that, and we went up and viewed it, and I wanted to bring it down to the Firth of Forth here to one of the harbours on the Forth here, and do a tourist boat with that as the Clyde puffer, the Viking Spark, and and to do some sailings on the thing, and perhaps to do a restaurant, or failing that, if they wouldn't let me to do a restaurant on it for doing some sailing trips around the fort and the bridges, the famous bridges, and or failing that, to do an Airbnb for the Scottish diaspora, so that Scottish people from abroad could come, stay on the Clyde puffer, have a couple of trips around the bay and that type of thing, and we would do that. And I thought, I would love that, you see. And so I felt very excited about this. COVID had come and all this thing, and everything stopped with COVID and all that. At the end of COVID, I was trying to persuade my wife, she always tries to stop these projects, quite rightly. That's how I do. And what do you call it? And she's always trying to stop me doing things. Anyway, so I was persuading her, and to let me buy this. So I went back up, and bloomin' hell, it had sold. When at the end of COVID, it had sold, and I was fuming with myself. Anyway, so and it was a man called, it might have been Ricky Thompson, Ricky something, man who had bought it was his father had owned a big distillery in the north of Scotland called the North of Scotland Distillery, and they had relocated to many years ago apparently to what's that town, Dunbarton, with the drums, Dumbarton on the west coast, and their factory and that was there, but because it wasn't a distillery anymore, they do, I think, blending and bottling and all that type of thing. And he bought the Viking Spark in order to make it into a rum distillery on the ship, on the boat. Wow. Whole of the Viking Spark is quite a substantial area, and up to then I didn't know much about anything about distilling, and I thought, hang on, you get a distillery on the Viking Spark. And I thought, what a brilliant idea, because I was kicking myself that, one, I didn't think of it, and two, that he had and bought it. And so, lo and behold, I thought, well, hang on, the buildings joined between my house and the Lobster Pot pub, where, if you go back in the deeds, where the buildings, the run of buildings that run along, were a shop, distillery, a brew house, and a bakery, and they were joined to the pub. They were part of the pub. Some of the old buildings have been knocked down now, but they were so it was all those four things happened along there in the old days. And I thought, well, God, that's as big as the Clyde puffer. It's bigger than the Clyde puffer. I could do a distillery there. So I started looking into the distilling then, you see, because now, as I said, I've got the manager and the chefs running the pub. So I segued onto this, and then I applied my wife with drink, and persuaded her to let me to let the. So we started doing an experiment. I started going around to the small distillery, and then we started and then she got quite into it. Not just the drink, she got quite into the recipe bit of it and how it works and all the thing. She's quite she's brighter than me and all these things. And so she got quite into this, and I was very excited about it. So I spent a year, 18 months, rebuilding the thing to bring it up to the standards, re-roofing, and you have to, even though I've kept it looking very old, it's a listed building, and that creates its own problems. But you have to. Everything needed to look old and look authentic and look the thing. So I took great care to restore it all really properly back into the thing, and researched all the thing. At the same time, we were studying distilling and how it all works and getting all the thing. We were going on courses and various things like that. Learned the distilling, but what we wanted to do was whiskey and to revive the whiskey bit and to do. But as the man Ricky, I think it's Thompson, the man something. Now he never did the distillery. He ran into some problems on doing a distillery on a boat, apparently. And I don't know the detail, but it was in one of the newspapers across there that he didn't pursue it, he didn't get the permissions or whatever happened. I don't actually know the detail, but he didn't do it, and I'm not sure if he sold it on again. I'd still be interested in it. I've got some other ideas, but I'm going to look into that. Anyway, so the upshot was now we started our going down the road of our distillery, and that was very exciting. And we started getting working out exactly the equipment and all that, and we got a local consultant to come in and look at the fine detail and so on, and that thing, and we paid. And then we've opened the distillery now, where we do tours and people come do the tours, see all the very old-fashioned copper distillery works and all that type of thing. You can see it online, and then the people finish up their tour and finish up with a meal in the lobster pot, you see, and it all ties in nicely, and that gives the job back again, back in harness. And I'm talking too much, aren't I?
No, I'm loving it. A couple of things that I would maybe ask you about. When you were talking about buying the Clyde Puffer, it doesn't ring, maybe an Irishman could find a way of getting it to work, but doesn't it ring through for me? A Clyde Puffer sailing down the Forth.
Oh, no, that's where you're wrong. There were Clyde Puffers came to the Forth, not a lot, but they did come down. They really did. Then I found others. I researched where I could buy one somewhere else because I was dead keen on this, and I still am, and I still will do this if I can. I found one in a place called Starport on Severn. These were called the Vic ship, the Chewelin ship, and the Vic 99 or 96 is down in Starport on Severn through the lock there. But she went on fire after she came through the lock, and they reckon the steel expanded, and she was never able to get back out of the lock. And then there's one on the south coast of England. Then there's one in the museum over near Glasgow. There's one over there. Not Glasgow. It's somewhere over there. There's one in the museum, a beautiful one. But they're very hard to get Clyde Puffers, and I would love a Clyde Puffer. It'd be right up my street. And I still haven't given up on the other one.
I would have thought it would maybe make a bit of money. It would be quite expensive, would they?
Yeah, you're going to pay over 100,000 for a Clyde Puffer, yeah. And then you've got to spend money on it. And if you're going to bring people out on it, then you have to get all the certificates, as you know, to get it. But I believe the Vital Spark is in very good nick. What do you call it? All boats have some problem, but I believe the fields were restructured several years ago by a society that a lot of money was spent on the hull many years ago and so on. And she's still a lovely, lovely boat, type of thing. But and that may come up again. I know she's still at Inverary, and I still have designs on there. I still have just see the white. It's very big. Yeah.
What's the hardest job? Convincing the missus or finding a boat, a puffer?
No, but it's always I always have Sheena she always resists these ideas that they no, and God help her, she says, because all the detail work, the technical book work and things of these things always falls back on her because I'm thick as a plank. And so she And so she said, "Oh no, don't do this, don't do this." But then I try and get her into there, and I keep badgering her. She gives in, and then but then she tends to like it in there. She loves the distilling now. You can't stop her on the distilling. She's thinks she's creating all sorts of things. Honey rums. She's doing raspberry rums from the garden. She's doing all sorts of things, and there's such creative things you can do there. And we're even making poutine at the moment. You know, the Irish poutine, what they call it.
Yeah.
And thing came onto me just recently that I discovered as we were about to make, as we made the first experiment back to the thing rum, that before you can sell it in Britain, would you believe, that it has to be authenticated by the Scottish Whisky Association, because that is now covered. Poutine is now covered because of the north of Ireland being in that jurisdiction. It's now covered by the quality controls on thing. So imagine that, quality controls on poutine, and the whole idea of poutine is it's a wild pan, and it's a wild thing. But having quality controls, that's a whole new one for me. Anyways, I really nice about the people there, but they said hold off while we authenticate it, and they're doing that at the moment, and that was thing. But it just never struck me, and they didn't tell me off because it was something that you wouldn't expect to know, you know. And what do you call it? But there you go. That's the thing, isn't it? Poutine regulated by HMC or what do you call it? And they've got it.
Your forefathers will be spinning in their grave at that.
I don't know. It gives it a certain respect, doesn't it? There's also that. It gives it a certain kudos and respect, because poutine always had a slightly bad name, because when I was a kid, going to confession, you used to go to confession every week. You had to go. You couldn't fast enough to keep up with it, and he ended up making up sin, and what do you call it? Which is yet another thing to tell the following week. Anyway, so when I said to the priest, I said, and I was drinking some poutine, and he said, "That'll make you go blind." And I said, "I've only been in here 2 minutes, and that's the second thing you said is going to make me go blind." Oh, I didn't go back to that place. Anyway, it's a fierce place, but what can you do? But no, if it's put in a certain respect, there is a superb distillery in County Down in the Mourne Mountains, just above Rosstrevor town on the Carliford Loch, Rosstrevor town, and in the mountains.
I've been there.
And it's called Colm Distillery. In the cowshed. It's a lovely thing. As the young man there, and he is only young. He looked like he'd only out of school, but then they all look like that now to up their age, don't they? They look. Anyway, he was doing the most magnificent distilling up there, and he is doing this other wonderful thing. He's doing open air fermenting. In other words, he's putting his wort in his washback out in the open air, the heat of the air. Apparently, there's yeast in all the trees, the fields, all in the air. I didn't know about pre-yeast. Pre-yeast comes down and it comes into the tank, and he's blow ferment. It's thing like that. Yeah, and it produces, and he's just won some award that I wouldn't remember, but he's just won some serious awards in Ireland for both his whiskey and his poutine. He's doing really well, and that's
Colm, I could say that's the exact same process that they put the mother or starter through and make sourdough bread. That's how they'll get heat. They have this flour and the water, but it's left to do
the natural yeast.
Yep.
That's lovely, isn't it?
And that ferments it.
Now, in Scotland, I'm a recent, that is to say, 5 years convert to the whiskey industry in terms of having any knowledge. And so I've been reading up like that, so I'm not that well versed. But it does seem to me that small batch whiskey is gaining huge respect and ground. People doing small batches. It's the same in beers, that people are into quality now rather than quantity. And with beers and that, small batch beers all over Europe are taking on very nicely everywhere. And that's wonderful. And the same thing is happening in the whiskey. People experimenting with different styles. There's what's their name in Holyrood in Edinburgh, and they're experimenting Holyrood Distillery, a new distillery, multi-million pound distillery, and they're experimenting with all different yeasts and brewer yeasts and different types of things and different casks and different things. And so age is becoming less important in whiskey than age is becoming less important now than the quality of and the uniqueness of each type of one. And a company called Dean Whiskey in Edinburgh have come out and have booked several of our cats. But when they're of our existing whiskey for when they're mature, which is not quite nice. And so that it's nice that we have a ready sale already started on it before. You have to, as you know, wait 3 years in a day before it's the whiskey. But we do sell what's called New Make Spirit. You're familiar with New Make Spirit? That's the young whiskey. Moffat Distillery, a cracking distillery down in middle of nowhere, down on those driving towards England, and Moffat down there, extraordinarily huge, beautiful distillery, and they heat in wood fire whiskey. That they're done by wood, which is quite wonderful. Are heated by wood, and they are doing 6 monthly new make. So their whiskey you can buy each 6 months as it matures up to the final 6 months when it becomes whiskey. And I think that's wonderful. We're going to sneak that idea from them, and they're really nice people. And and we're going to copy their idea, but we will acknowledge their idea and so on, because we're in it for the fun rather than the competitiveness or the thing.
Well,
they're all pretty better than us.
If you're in it for the fun, I'll maybe not offend you with my next point. When you're talking about selling poaching,
yeah.
I can't believe that there's an Irishman coming over, putting a distillery up in Scotland, and she beans know somewhere on it.
Absolutely. And do you know the HMC, or they are very particular about exactly what goes on the label. You have to get every word exact on the label of your description of Scotch whiskey. Scotch whiskey is such a vital individual product, and it has to be protected all over the world. And they have all these really strong rules, and that's true for poaching. They're at the moment looking at our label, which you said to them, the label, our proposed label, and they will make changes to that to bring it into line with their very strict rules and quality control. And I'm quite excited that they're bringing those quality points on the poaching. It gives poaching a new respect, doesn't it, in a sort of way? As I say, before it was regarded as a sort of a bit of a wild man's drink and a bit of a cheap drink that you would buy at the horse fair, and I go around the back and drink, and get okay. But no, it's lovely that these things are getting respectful, and that they've expected. Now, we had a lot of trouble with our actual whiskey bit, because you have to register, if you're doing a single malt whiskey, you have to register your trademark on it, because, again, it's a protected thing. And because we're 5 miles from where Mary Queen of Scots was born and lived after she was educated in France, where she lived, and Linlithgow Palace, and because they owned lands here around Blackness, we wanted to name our whiskey, our nascent whiskey, we wanted to name it Mary Queen of Scots. And the trademark people said, oh no, you can't do that. That's offensive, and it's not really right for a Scotch whiskey and that type of thing. This is the trademark people in London, I think. And And fortunately, our consultant said, well, no, that's a good name. You got to pursue that. And Mary Queen of Scots, because it's quite catchy with the younger people. Yeah. And so we appealed, and he said in the appeal, this lister, he said, chopping a woman's head off is more disrespectful than naming a whiskey after her, because they chopped their head off. So that was more disrespectful than naming a whiskey after. So on the appeal, we won, and we were allowed. we are allowed now. And so in 2 years' time, when our whiskey is mature, our whiskey, because as I said, the 3-year rule, in 2 years' time, when our whiskey is mature, we will be launching Mary Queen of Scots. And that's a great name, isn't it? So our what do you call it, spirit, our new make spirit, the young version of that, which we're allowed to sell, but not as whiskey, only as new make spirit. That is called, to share them up all together, we call that Virgin Mary. And what do you call it? And that we actually sell now. And that's right, because that doesn't come under the controls, because it's new make spirit, you see. And so we call that Virgin Mary, and that's very popular.
And what is the Virgin Mary? What drink is it?
It's the whiskey. It's the young version. I didn't get that clear. It's the young version of our Mary Queen of Scots. So our whiskey, all the whiskey we make, goes into oak barrels in our cellar that mature. It takes 3 years to mature, and the same as Moffat Distillery and the other, we sell new make spirit. That is the maturing. We take some of the maturing spirit and sell it, but you can't sell it as whiskey because you need some income coming in, you see. So the maturing whiskey, the young whiskey of Mary Queen of Scotch is allowed to be sold as new make spirit. And at Lindor's Abbey, they sell it as Aquavite, for instance, their new make spirit. All the new small distilleries do new make spirit. Do you know, Jim, why the new make? How all these new little distilleries are cropping up, all big ones, small ones? Do you know why that is?
No.
Oh, well, I tell you, what happened was in 2009 or 2006, I get confused between the 6 and the 9. One of those, between 20, it was illegal to distill under, I think it was 18,000 litre plant at a time because they wanted to keep control. This goes back to the 17th century when they controlled the volume of whiskey people would think to make it an industry rather than a craft, because they wanted to control, and it was important to control the quality of whiskey, people getting off the head. And so what they did was this law lasted on and increased in size, and so you were only allowed to open a very, very big distillery with multi-million pounds. So some gin aficionados that had a gin shop in London and called it Sixsmith gin shop, they applied to the High Court in London to be allowed to distill small amounts. And this was unheard of. And the 2 men and a financier, so 3 of them altogether, went to the High Court in London and won their permission on the grounds of competition or whatever rule to be allowed to distill. And it was the first time in hundreds of years that you're allowed to open a small craft distillery. And God bless them. I don't know who they are, but these Sixsmith people, but we all always had to gratitude because that then allowed other people to piggyback on their license, their idea to go and apply for a license. And those people, they should have the Nobel Prize because they allowed us all to start. And so everybody started opening little gin distilleries. Now then, of course, people like me and others who would like rum and whiskey thought, well, we can go in the same, we can apply in the same way. And we did, and we can. The only difficulty with us whiskey people is we got to wait 3 years to sell it, unless you do the new make spirit. Sorry, I didn't make myself terribly clear on that earlier, and I hope you got the idea now, the new make spirit. And it's worth going online and seeing new make spirit. There's some brilliant new make spirits around. They really are good. And they're as good as any whiskey, because they were always that way up to the 1850s, when the blight came in France and the brandy was stopped, and the sherry took off in England. Sherry barrels came to Scotland, and then the colouring and the aging started. And that's where the quality control all came in, and they had to bring in 3 years rule because people were pretending that it was aged whiskey when it wasn't, by putting colouring in. And so, I do talk too much, don't I?
Not at all.
And what do you call it? So that's goings on. That's the goings on the whiskey thing. And so now we're doing dishes with whiskey in the thing. The chefs are doing for our visitors when we got the tours, particularly the overseas tours. We're doing salmon with whiskey sauce and all these sort of things. What do you call it in the pub to go with when doing the tour. So we do them bespoke meals when they do the tour. We can do a package meal with themed food. And the tourist people are helping us on all this, which is very good. Falkirk Tourism are doing a thing. They've just done a video on us there last week, one of our evening tours, and so on. And I meet the tourists playing the bagpipes, for them, and what do you call it? And I apologise to them. And because I drive the village mad with my bagpipes, because I'm not very good. And so I'm putting a barrel of whiskey down this month. I'm putting a barrel of whiskey down in the cellar for the village for when I die, to atone for my upsetting them with the traffic and the what they call it, the bagpipes. Because every day at 4 o'clock I'm out there playing the bagpipes, driving them mad, you see. And now, so I was saying to you that did you know why there are so many small distilleries starting up? And the reason is that in 2009 or 2006, I'm never quite sure, and some people who had gin shop in London called the Sixsmith Gin, they wanted to make their own gin, But they weren't allowed because there's laws going back to the 17th century that said you can only did huge amounts before you can open a distillery. You have to have huge plants, something like an 18,000 litres or something was the rule. And to stop nefarious people getting in and anybody doing hooch everywhere. So they went to the High Court in London and appealed the decision that has lasted for hundreds of years. And they, after an appeal, won permission to do small batch distilling. And that opened the doors, and we're very grateful to them for doing that. That opened the doors for smaller people to open gin distilleries around everywhere. And of course, that was true of people like myself who wanted to do whiskey, and those of us in Scotland, the small distilleries who wanted to do, who opened things. And so we were allowed to open small distilleries and do small amounts, still controlled obviously very strongly by the authorities.
That's fantastic. And that spread right through the country. We've got gin distillers right up in the north here.
Absolutely everywhere. It's a good little local business that you can do in all sorts of buildings and in traditional areas. So the location doesn't matter. In fact, in Scotland, the location is good for anywhere in Scotland is good for whiskey, because the people of the world associate very much Scotland and Ireland as the whiskey capitals of the world. And the extraordinary thing, in a time when people are reducing their alcohol intake, that whiskey is becoming more and more popular around the world and everywhere. Which is now are making a huge amount of whiskey and so on, which is quite interesting. But people are going for quality rather than quantity, which is an excellent thing, because you obviously have to be careful.
Quoted a word there, a similar process making sourdough bread. There's a mother, they call it, which is, it's this mother when it's fermented. That's what they use. There's no yeast used. That's what they use. And if it's lying for a while and it separates and there's a film floating on the top of it, it's separated a bit. Do you know what that's called? The hooch.
No, the hooch. I'm going to write that down. That's very good. Good word. Good word. That's very Scottish.
I would say you're closer to it at home than Scotland. But it's funny, the similarities. It's obviously just the process.
Yeah.
So with the project, I take it you'll feel quite an importance in sourcing local and keeping it local.
Yeah, we do. Now all our food, in as much as we can, comes locally, because we, with the local tourism thing, we emphasize that on our menus. You see, the local bit, and so it's important for us to try and that's all over Scotland. People are doing that, trying to get things local. So much of our seafood comes from the East New, as you can imagine, and Larry fish, David Larry fish.
Oh, David Larry.
Yep. We have trouble getting enough lobster. That's one of our problems. So we do have to, out of season, use a lot of frozen lobster out of season. And in fact, we were scammed for 9,500 by some scammers in attempting to buy. We were trying to buy some bulk lobsters from Norway, and they had intercepted the supplier, the company in Norway. Scammers had intercepted their thing and defrauded us of thing. So we thought we were ordering from them, and we were ordering scammers, and we paid 9,500 and got nothing. And so on, but that's another story. But then, now all our barley, for single malt, it has to be Scottish barley, and it is malted for us by Crisp Malt. You might not have heard of them. They're a big company in Scotland. Malt, not a very Scottish name. In Alloa, there's a big malting at Alloa, and I think they might up north to Scotland, I'm not sure. But they're very good, and they're doing our malt for it. But I'm very interested in what a Scottish man has done in Waterford City in Ireland, the oldest city in Ireland. There's a Scottish man who went there and he bought the old Guinness brewery, which when Guinness bought it originally back in the 1930s, had a distillery there as well. And this Scottish man bought it and fitted it out with there are the old stills there, but he fitted out new stills from the company up in the north of Scotland that do the stills beginning with F. It's North Parkinson, it's something like that. not Berg. It's something like that. The, the Scotland there. They said they're one of the best, two of the best in Scotland. They say are Forsyth in the north of Scotland and Preston Pan in the southeast of Scotland, and they make proper stills. And I've made them for Ian, and he got his stills from Forsyth and put them in Waterford. This is Scotland in Waterford, and he is doing a new thing called terroir whiskey. That is terroir in the French sense of like the wine areas, the regions, and the, you know what I mean, the terroirs, the land and things. And he is doing, where I am in Ireland, where our house is in Ireland, on Wexford on the Hook Peninsula, they've done a whiskey with just the grain. So he gets the grain, he gets farmers that are just locally to buy, to get one source of grain from an area, like the Hook Peninsula where I am, and he does Hook Peninsula whiskey. And so people like me here in Scotland can drink whiskey from round their house that's made from the thing. And I'm hoping to find a farmer around Glenitco, somewhere here, who will grow us some barley that we can then get crisp malt to do the malting on, that we can do terroir whiskey here in Scotland, up and in Ireland. And if you Google them, you'll find them there. It's called Waterford Distillery. And I'm not very good at remembering detail, but there's a lot of detail about him. And what do you call it? And he was a Scottish distiller that went to Ireland. I think this has happened before. There's a Scottish man called Jameson went to Ireland and made whiskey as well. Did you know that? Yeah, sorry. I did it again, didn't I? So there's a Scottish man. I have a terrible habit of talking. So there's a Scottish man who is the Scottish distiller who's gone there doing that. And here am I trying to make in Scotland myself. How it all didn't interact.
It's amazing, really, how, and well done, and credit to you, how you've obviously researched a huge amount, that you can get the whole process that's involved in whiskey and get it round your local area. I think that's brilliant. So you're gonna finish up. You're gonna have your whiskey. You're gonna have your seafood, all from your local area.
It involves an awful lot of drinking. I do a lot of research. Because I have to go around all these places, checking out this work and trying out all these different distilleries to get the quality right.
So you're quality controller.
Yeah, don't go too bad. Yeah, that's the danger, isn't it, when you go too bad? But people nowadays, everybody's into quality rather than quantity. So that's what we're all doing. Tipping quality. That's the way forward.
I think that's amazing, and it's fantastic, the energy and enthusiasm you have for what you're doing. I think that's just wonderful.
No, I totally enjoy it. It's really playing at it. It's nothing nicer than when you're like yourself, 75, that you can get into something you really like to do, that you're doing something you really like. Because otherwise, a lot of my friends around my age spend an awful lot of time watching television, because climate-wise, it's not a great, Ireland and Scotland is not great countries to get out and about in. And so a lot of people sit and watch the television, and you can get into really thick habits of watching daytime television, and that's always the danger. So I'd rather be up and doing something. So that's why I like getting on with the work all the time.
That's so true. When I sold the business just a couple of years ago, and when I was joining that word retirement, it frightened the life out of me for years. And friends that I have that are maybe just a year or two ahead of me, that's one of the couple of the things that says, no, whatever you do, don't stop. You can't stop.
Well,
and you're certainly not. But the other thing, they used to say, the biggest danger when you retire to mental and physical health is daytime television.
I didn't know that. That's so true, but isn't it? It really is. It numbs the brain, doesn't it? Dopes and all that type of thing. It really does numb the brain. But did I tell you, and because I wasn't sure if we were cut off at that bit of the thing, that I'm leaving a barrel of whiskey for the village, that I'm putting down for the village. There's about 85 people in the village, as I estimate, within the village sign, if you like, where it says Blackness. And when I die, it's a 125-litre barrel, and when that 63%, that goes down to 55%, and they will probably get about of 70 cl bottles. They'll probably get 2 full bottles each, and a bit over to drink in the pub. And so when I'm dead, they can all have a hoolie in the village to see me off. And I think that'd be nice, Dutch. And to say sorry about my bad bagpiping. I might have told you that before. I wasn't sure if we were cut off at that point. I mentioned that earlier.
So it's going to be a celebration of life rather than mourning a death.
Absolutely.
Wonderful, wonderful. And tell me, going back to yourself and Sheena, if you're in the house having a night yourselves or with friends, what would be your food choice? And also, what would you like to drink?
Again, I like beer, but I like wine. I like white wine, funny enough. I know red wine's good for you, but I'm very fond of the white wines, really. And what do you call it? But and I go through a variety of them, the Chablis and so on, and the Dancier and that type of thing. I like a dry wine. But the eating wise, I do very much like seafood because it's good on my tummy. I like it from my stomach, seafood. So I like grilled fish, all manners of grilled fish. But I like just plain grilled fish with butter on. Lots of butter is what I like. A grilled fish it would be my favourite, and that goes even to prawns and things like that. And obviously on a special occasion, the lobster's lovely. But what do you call it then? But I do enjoy that very much. So I do like grilled seafood. There's an awful lot of countries, like I suppose Portugal and things like that, where they almost exist on grilled seafood, don't they? When you think about it, and a lot of those countries where they've got longevity as well. What do you call it? Will eat a lot of fish and that type of thing. So I like fish and salads. I like that very much. Salad I've got very into again, but unfortunately I do like to have lots of them. What do you call it on it? The oil and vinegar, the dressings on it, and so that's not very good for you. But I do like that. That's me on. But I do like grilled seafood and that type of thing very much.
Anytime I'm asked when I had the seafood restaurant myself, and people would say, "What's your favourite seafood?" I'm sure you'll get yourself. My standard answer is, I wouldn't pick one because I'd feel I was doing a disservice to the others.
Oh, that's very good. Yeah, no, I hadn't thought of that. But you need variety, don't you? Anyway, so it's no good eating the one thing all the time. Yeah, the variety is the thing, isn't it? On seafood, they're quite like
Another good caption for you to jot down or put on the wall of your restaurant. Nutritionalist system here recently. If it swims, it slims.
Oh, that's pretty good. All right, I will write that down. It swims, it slims. That's very good. Very good. I shall pinch that. You see, I don't really have ideas. I just pinch all my ideas from other people who are cleverer than me.
I'm always wary of the man that tells me how stupid he is. All great. So how can our listeners check up and look online, see what you do? And is there a website?
Yeah. Now, the three main places that you find is the website, which is the Lobster Pot at Blackness.co.uk, and then there's Blackness Bay Distillery.co.uk, and then the other place is Facebook on both of them, which is Blackness Bay Distillery on Facebook, and the Lobster Pot at Blackness again on Facebook. It's probably more Facebook than the website, because I'm not very good at doing these things out, so I don't get to change things much on the website. And people book online on the website, which I don't understand at all how that happens. They book online, and how it's so confusing you wouldn't believe, but so technically difficult. But and that's at the Blackness Bay Distillery.co, and they book the tours on that, you see, which is quite nice.
Well, that's excellent. Do you do takeaways?
We do very much. And unfortunately, when the wife's away, I take away all the time. That almost rhymes, doesn't it? When the wife's away, I take away. Because my weakness is when the wife's away, it's so easy to nip across and say to the chef, "So can you knock me up a quick something?" And that's all. But we do for the village, we do takeaways. We do fish and chips. We do I think it's about 5 things: fish and chips and steak pies and things like that. And what do you call it? And what do you call it? People even take away pints, God help them, and take them home and because it's a very small village and very walkable. Everyone's within very quick walking distance from it, which is quite nice. It's a very integrated village as well, and we all gather in the pub and we all chat and do our things, and we all have our music nights and sessions and quiz nights and things in the pub. Is always very popular, and we love that, you know.
It's a real community spirit. It sounds great.
It really is a lovely little community, Blackness. It's surprising. Because people have got so divided these days in the way that the house is more and more where it draws people in, doesn't it? And you need a community hub. You need something like a pub where people can meet. When we came here first, it was a bit difficult. You could only meet people when you were walking. But with the pub, and particularly on special occasions like Christmas and Hogmanay and so on, it's lovely to have the pub. We have a great time. Virtually all the villagers turn up.
Fantastic. Maybe a good point to fold up, and thank you very much, Colm. I've loved your chat, and your enthusiasm and passion for what you do is just infectious, and it's really well done. Well done. Thank you so much.